Alright, so this video is going to be about all the areas that you are avoiding within your Jiu-Jitsu. So my name is Gil Alcocer. I started training Jiu-Jitsu back in 2008. I opened my own academy, the Jiu-Jitsu Institute, back in 2018, and I received my black belt from the Mendez brothers in 2019. Alright, so there's a human characteristic where we tend to avoid the stuff that we are not good at, and we tend to stay in or run towards the things we are good at. Or another way of saying this is stay in our comfort zone. And this goes for basically everything in life that you do, including the things that you love. So no matter what you do in life, even like I said, the things that you love, there's going to be areas within that thing that you love that you tend to avoid. This happens at like every single level of that thing that you love. So obviously this is a jiu-jitsu channel mostly, and so I'll give examples within jiu-jitsu. Most people that do jiu-jitsu love jiu-jitsu. For instance, a super common scenario, you get a guy that used to wrestle, so he comes in day one to jiu-jitsu and he's paired up with white belts, but most white belts haven't wrestled, so he has a huge advantage when it comes to takedown. He gets the takedown pretty easily, and then his jiu-jitsu journey starts there. He's on top a lot, so he's starting to learn how to play the top position. Then eventually this becomes his first comfort zone, and he avoids being on bottom like the plague. He just refuses to play bottom ever. Then you have the exact opposite scenario. There's the guy who's probably lazy and realizes wrestling is really hard work, and so how do I avoid that? You just pull guard. So he commonly pulls guard, ends up being on bottom. Most people that are new want to be on top anyway, so it's pretty easy. And then he just keeps playing guard, and he starts to create some skills there, a skill set there, and then that's his first comfort zone, playing guard. And then from there on, we'll never ever wrestle. And I gotta say, for me, I'm the lazy guy. I started pulling guard right away pretty much day one, and took me about 14 and a half years of training before I finally embraced the wrestling. And then like I said, it goes to every level. So you have from the top, you could be the guy that plays top, and then there's two major ways of passing guard. There's speed passing and there's pressure passing. So you'll figure out which one you like better, and typically it leads you to quote unquote not liking or avoiding the other style. If you're always pressure pass, you never speed pass, or vice versa. For the guy on bottom, they figure out a guard that they like. Maybe a half guard's super easy to get to, and pretty much everyone can do a half guard. It doesn't take much like athleticism or flexibility or anything like that, so half guard's a common one. They start to get a little bit of a comfort zone playing half guard, and you never see them go to like a full guard or work anything else. They just stick with the half guard. Or maybe they figure out, oh, I get to close guard. I did this a lot. Get to close guard. It's super hard for people to get out of and pass, so it's a good spot for me to rest, be lazy, think my way through this. And they never open the guard. You even got guys who spend all their time in bad spots. So in the beginning, they start training. Maybe they're a little less athletic or whatever the case may be. They get their guard pass. They start commonly getting their guard pass, and then they kind of clam up and they figure out like the round ends and the guy never tapped him, and then they take that as a little bit of a win, which it is a little bit of a win. It's like, okay, this guy couldn't tap me. Maybe I'm good at not getting tapped. And then so they start focusing on never getting tapped, but they're not focusing on having an actual guard or guard retention. So they constantly get passed right away by everyone. They have basically no guard or a weak guard, and then they spend most of the round not, quote unquote, not getting tapped, and they take that as a win, but they never get out of that comfort zone of try to stop them from actually passing your guard. Then you have the super intense guys. So they come out at 100% every training session. They go 100%, everything they got. So obviously if you go 100%, you have success. You start getting past people's guards or whatever the case is. You use your speed or your strength. You're just going so fast, so hard, and you have some success. So then that becomes their comfort zone, and they only go 100% every single time. They never take the time to slow down and maybe get a little bit more technical. And then what happens is they run into someone who's maybe better than them, and they're super intense, big bum rush in the beginning, and doesn't work, and then they're gassed. And then as soon as they start getting dominated, they'll go ahead and tap out and be like, oh man, I'm exhausted, I need a breather, and they take a break. So all they focused on was that one part, when in reality, you should have just stayed on bottom, stayed in the bad spot, start working your defense. Or you'll see they'll be super intense for a round, and even though they didn't lose their round, they might have won the whole round, but then they have to take a whole round off. Like, do that round that you want to sit out and play a different game. Let people pass your guard, play the bad spots, embrace the other side of it. So to be clear, I'm not saying any of that stuff is bad. I think it's part of the journey. Everyone should do all those different scenarios to a certain extent. The problem is when it becomes your comfort zone and that's all you do, and you avoid the opposites of that. You avoid everything else, especially the opposites of those exact positions. Staying, like everyone's heard this, like staying in your comfort zone will only hold you back. Like, quote unquote, everything you want is outside of your comfort zone. Everyone's heard that before. And it's true at like every level. If your guard passing is starting to get stale, you can't pass people's guard and all you do is speed pass, then embrace a little bit of pressure passing and see the other side of it. If you're the guard guy, like wrestle for a little bit. You'll get tired, but you're going to learn new techniques. And what you'll find in jiu-jitsu is there's always it's like a yin and a yang. Like by playing wrestling, your wrestling defense gets better, and also you will figure out stuff that you can use from your guard, which you're a guard guy. So you're going to learn other things from playing on the top or wrestling position that's going to help you where you're already comfortable, the positions that you do like. If you're the wrestler, like for sure, pull guard every now and then, or don't even pull guard. Just sit on your butt, start playing from the bottom, embrace the guard a little bit. That's one of the biggest dramatic transformations is when you get a wrestler who's already comfortable doing the top stuff, that's good at wrestling and takedowns, and they embrace the guard. That's like a perfect yin and yang, and it makes a huge difference for people who like to focus on only wrestling and being on top, especially if they're the wrestler type that does anti-jiu-jitsu. They're just ripping out and running away from stuff on the top instead of embracing the jiu-jitsu part and passing the guard and becoming more technical. Guard will definitely make that happen. If you're the closed guard guy, open your guard. If you're the half guard guy, work your way to a full guard, any type of full guard. You get the idea with all these. Like, try to step out of that comfort zone and embrace like the scarier parts, the stuff you're avoiding. I will say, if you're brand new to something, like a brand new white belt, like none of this really applies to you, at least not yet. In the beginning, everything you learn is all positive, positive, positive. It's all making you better because you basically know nothing. But my point is, like, if you've been training like at least a year and a half, you're a blue belt or so, start to embrace looking around. The faster you can like add this concept to your training, the faster you will get much better because it happens quick. You get your comfort zone, especially like blue belt is like, there's like a big major thing for most people. And I was just like this coming up as a blue belt. You really want to stay in your comfort zone because like the worst thing that could happen to you as like a blue belt, especially a baby blue belt, is a white belt beats you. So you don't want to ever leave your comfort zone. You just want to stay in your best area and don't take any chances because God forbid white belt taps you out. That's like horrible. But that's all ego right there. And I get it. Like the lower belts, even like a blue or purple belt might actually be like, dang, that white belt tapped him. That white belt's better than him. But in reality, like that's not how it really is. Everyone has good days. Everyone has bad days. Like that's all ego. Just like it's hard to actually do. Everyone's heard this, but just leave that at the door. The faster you can embrace this, the faster you will get better. And then right now, it might be close between you and that white belt when you're a baby blue belt, but give it another year. If you're doing this and they're more focused on like not losing to a white belt once they get their blue belt and things like that, like the learning curve is like exponential. It's not even gonna be comparable. It's not even gonna be close. No one will ever think like, oh, that lower belt is better than you. If you can get over that, worrying about your ego and your fear of like losing to somebody or something like that, anything along those lines, it's just your learning will skyrocket again. It's gonna be back to those newbie gains when you just started jiu-jitsu. And also with that, there never will be a time where you're gonna embrace an area you weren't good at, and then afterwards you're gonna say to yourself, man, I got worse at jiu-jitsu because I tried this new position. You're only gonna get better. And even if you don't even realize what it connects to yet, down the road it's gonna connect to something else. You're gonna be like, oh yeah, and it's gonna make more sense. And because you had done that in the past, you are now better. I personally have had like many areas, like when you train this long, there's just so much in jiu-jitsu. I've avoided areas for probably too long, certain areas. And then once I did dive into some area that I was avoiding for a while, I realized how much it connects with other positions that I would have never made that connection to without jumping in myself and doing it. Like personally, I love the berimbolo position and everything that goes with it. And I avoided the leg lock system for quite a while. It seemed really scary. It just didn't seem that fun to me, honestly, at first. And not currently, but formerly, I would say I was definitely way more of a gi guy than a no gi guy. So I don't know, it just felt like I would be taking away a lot from my gi game to practice all this no-gi leg lock stuff. And then subconsciously, deep down inside, I definitely had, like, as a gym owner, an academy owner, I had like a deep down rooted fear, like, what if some no-gi only blue belt comes in and all he's practiced for 3 years straight is just leg locks, and he comes in here and I'm basically like a white belt when it comes to leg locks, and he just taps me out a whole bunch of times with that one area of his jiu-jitsu in front of all my students, and I can't stop it. So there was like this deep seated subconscious fear I had. But eventually I did take the time and I jumped into the leg locks, and I got pretty good at those. And what I realized was all the leg work that you're doing to set up your leg locks, the pummeling, circling your legs, flexing your tibs, and using your feet as strong hooks to set up all the different leg lock positions, it's the exact same leg work that you do with basically all of the bear and bolo position. And so that was like a light bulb went off for me, like, oh, it didn't take me long to get good at leg lock stuff because I'd already done all this bear and bolo stuff. So it was like set and ready for me to already be good at it. Just had to make that connection, connect a few dots, and then bam, I was already super good. Not super good, but I was already pretty good at leg locks right away. It was very quick for me, the transition, because of all the bear and bolo stuff that I had already previously. And as soon as that clicked for me, all the fear of some lower belt, mostly a lower belt because I own an academy and I didn't want to look bad in front of my students, but all the fear of getting leg lock basically disappeared. Like, I understood it, I know how to stop it. And another thing that came with that is I learned every single leg lock, there's a berimbolo counter to it. And because I'm already good at berimbolos, that helped the fear disappear. Like, oh, please go for a leg lock. I'm about to look badass when I take your back with this berimbolo setup. And it goes vice versa too. Every berimbolo counter, or every berimbolo you do, there's some sort of leg lock counter in there that they can hit on you if you're not ready for it. And then for that little tidbit is I made that connection in my head with the leg locks and berimbolo positions, and then a couple years later, Mikey Musi, we all know now he's doing no-gi and he's super into the leg lock worlds and stuff like that, and he was a berimbolo master, one of the best berimbolo guys ever. And he said that himself, so I felt pretty vindicated when I heard him say that I was definitely onto something there. Point being though, back to the point is, like, dive in, jump in, get into those areas you're avoiding. They're only going to help you. It's only ego holding you back, nothing else. If you jump in, you're gonna get better, and you're gonna achieve new goals and do more stuff that you want out of your jiu-jitsu. There's a reason you're avoiding something, and the same reason you're avoiding it is why you should do it. Once you jump in and you figure one of these areas out, you have that knowledge forever. It doesn't leave you. All those negative feelings you might have, like fear and anxiety, like I had when it came to the leg locks, they just disappeared, and it disappeared forever. I just fixed that hole. It's not a hole in my jiu-jitsu, in my game anymore. It's done, gone. Never have to really worry about that again. Obviously, there could be someone who's like a black belt master foot leg locker that comes in and has dedicated his time to that, and he might get me, but no big deal. That's the point. He's that good. He's dedicated that much to it. He can beat me. That's fine. I'm sure there's other areas in jiu-jitsu where I've dedicated, like berimbolo stuff, where I'm going to get him there because he doesn't have that depth of knowledge in that area that I have. And so again, like I said earlier, the core concept that I'm hitting on here, I'm applying it to jiu-jitsu because jiu-jitsu is like my thing. It's what I've dedicated a lot of my life to. But this concept, it goes for everything in your whole life. If you've ever heard the sayings like, the obstacle is the way, or everything you want is outside of your comfort zone. It sounds like cheesy and cliche at this point because we've heard it so much, but it really is true. That's the core idea that I'm getting at. Get out of your comfort zone. And like I said, it goes for anything in life. Anything you want to accomplish, just you're going to have to like take a step back after a while. Every certain amount of time, I take step backs at every area in my life, and I look at what I'm doing and what I can improve on, what am I avoiding, things like that, things that I can change, because otherwise you just fall into like a rut, and it's just same thing over and over and over and over. Like even, so again, bringing it back to jiu-jitsu, everyone that starts jiu-jitsu, they start with the dream or the goal of getting their black belt, because that's like the pinnacle. But like less than 1% of people who train jiu-jitsu actually achieve a black belt. And like if you stop and think about why is that? When you first start, like I mentioned earlier, the learning curve is like, it's straight up. Everything you're doing is learning. And we're designed as humans to enjoy learning. It makes things fun. We're actually grasping the ideas and learning something. But within jiu-jitsu, we have this thing called the blue belt statistic, and what it is basically most people quit jiu-jitsu 1 to 2 years into it, and just statistically, with how long that is of training, you're going to be a blue belt when you quit. So it's called the blue belt statistic. And it goes back to what I was just saying about learning and this core concept. So what happens is those newbie games wear off. You get your comfort zones. You've got that little bit of knowledge where you have your comfort zones, and then you never want to leave that area for fear of losing, basically. Then after like a year or so, you start having your first lulls that you ever have, just because that's just the timeline. You just haven't gone through a lull yet. There's peaks and valleys, and then maybe you're wearing a blue belt and this white belt who's a former wrestler, he's pretty new to jiu-jitsu. He comes in and he smashes your guard on a day you're already exhausted and tired and not feeling great, and you're in a valley, and he beats you, and then bam, that doesn't feel good. You start questioning your jiu-jitsu. So then you start seeing the downside of jiu-jitsu, and then it kind of becomes like a vicious cycle. Then you're going with a lower belt, and like I mentioned earlier, you just stay out of those places that aren't your comfort zone. You don't want to lose. You stay there, and then you stop learning, basically, or the learning curve goes way down, and then it becomes less fun, and then eventually you just kind of get over it. People who maybe aren't falling into that trap are starting to surpass you, and so you just think, oh, I'm not even good at jiu-jitsu, this ain't for me, and then you quit. But again, if you just kill your ego. I know it's much easier said than done, but if you just kill your ego, jump into those bad spots, take your losses for a while through your valley. It's peaks and valleys, peaks and valleys. The overall graph would be going up, so the line would be up. But if you look closely, it looks like this, up and down, all the way up. So if you just go in there prepared, knowing that's going to happen, embrace it. Who cares? Think bigger picture. Like, who cares if you lose for a month to somebody, if in a year he's so far below you that he's not even touching you? Like, who cares at that point? It's more about bigger picture. And then, so long story short, what happens if you do this? So you wanted to achieve your black belt, that was your goal. So you do this, you break the ego, you quit avoiding stuff, you jump into those places you're avoiding. The fun comes back once you start getting over that a little bit, and the learning goes way up, and then you start winning. Then you're having fun learning, and obviously you're having fun winning, and that keeps you motivated. You keep training, and then enough time goes by, eventually you get your black belt because you made it fun, you kept it fun, and you kept progressing the whole time. Where if you don't do this, you just stagnate and eventually quit. And again, that's like any goal in life. It's easy in the beginning to do stuff when it's all good. It's when the bad stuff starts happening that you don't quit. You push through. You figure out what you're doing wrong. You figure out what you need to change, and then you can break through that. Have a breakthrough a little bit later if you just stick with it later. And that's all it is. It's peaks and valleys, breaking through your barriers in the beginning and achieving that next level. And it's just like it just happens over and over and over again. You're just reiterating, getting your reps in, and reiterating your jiu-jitsu or whatever your goal is. And me personally, like all the things I've ever accomplished in life, I'm about to be 40 years old now. All the things I've accomplished, when I look back, that's what it was. It was the stuff I stuck with. Obviously, we're not meant to do every single thing we ever try. We just don't like stuff, especially if you think about it, you're always drawn to what your natural talent is. But even natural talent, I read a whole book on this, the talent code, even that wears off. Even it makes the beginning even more fun, but that's when a lot of naturally talented people quit, is when the fun part wears off and they have to like start digging into the real work. But yeah, like I said, I've accomplished many goals, and it was with this exact thing. Like when it started to not be good, not be fun anymore, I started to look at like what's going on, what am I doing, and then I figured out like, oh, I avoided this, and then I go fix it, and then it becomes fun again. I got better, I hit a new peak, and then I continue on.